Many are the video games where the plot is as important, if not more important, than the gameplay. This may not be breaking news, since plots in games have been a crucial part of the adventure for over 30 plus years, but what is not often discussed is the importance of storytelling in games. There is a subtle but very important difference between the quality of a plot and the quality of conveying that plot for the player. One thing is the story, and one thing is the storytelling. But first things first, roll the intro. Plots in video games have developed quite substantially over the past decades, from simplistic premises to more complex lines of dialogues until becoming full-on odysseys that could compete with novels. I'm not the only one that claims that there are some video games out there with spectacular plots, filled with emotions, plot twists and wonders for us players to enjoy. There are some gaming reviewers that weigh the importance of the plot in the same way as the gameplay and graphics, remarking how a fun game to play but with a poor narrative component can be as disappointing as a game with a fantastic plot with bad gameplay. Quite remarkable, since many would consider video games to be, well, just games. But just like we learned in high school, there is a difference between the content of a story and how it is written. You can have the simplest of stories, but if it's written well, it can still be a masterpiece. The premise of plot is subjective. You can dislike or enjoy the various topics tackled by a story regarding how it is written, but good storytelling is a bit more objective. Even the dullest of plots can become interesting if well narrated. This is no different in video games. We would give a lot of care to what is being narrated in a game, to its characters, its role, its quest and its conclusion, but we might forget about the hows. How are the characters portrayed? How is the world functioning? How are the quests structured and related to the main story? How is the conclusion told and tied to the rest of the plot? The second level of reflection is important, because while we might not wish to overthink plots in games, these are the details that most resonate with us, the ones that actually make plots memorable or disappointing. In today's video, therefore, I will explain and bring some examples on why storytelling is, in my opinion, crucial, and how good storytelling makes many narrative masterpieces in gaming work so well. If you were to ask me what games have the best plot in terms of content, sequence of events and characters, I would cite games like The Witcher 3, Bioshock Infinite, Mafia 2 and many more traditional examples of games where the plot is important, enjoyable and complete. But if you ask me what games are kings in storytelling, I would give you another list, full with titles like Yakuza 0, the Stanley Parable, Call of Juarez, Celeste and some more. The difference between the first games I've mentioned and the other ones is that, while they are praised for the narrative aspect, the former are praised for the plot, the latter for the way they tell that plot. There is creativity, ingenuity, fascination in the way the latter games show the player the plot they have to offer, enhancing such plots thanks to the brilliant storytelling they have. Storytelling in gaming has to take in consideration that the player is in control of the main protagonist or protagonist, meaning that the plot has to merge well with the gaming nature the title is built in. This is not to say that the plots in games have to have multiple branches and different endings, but more so that the plot has to be consistent with the game that is played in, its medium if you will. A great example where gameplay and story do not align and thus the storytelling is weak is A Plague Tale: Innocence. I do not have big issues with the plot of the game. The premise of an exaggerated plague in Europe, where rats are not only bringing the bubonic plague, but also literally eating people alive, is unique to say the least, and the characters and their conflicts have interesting incipients, but the way the story is told is where I found the game to be very disappointing. There are various instances where the gameplay and the plot mismatch, many of which revolve around the last chapters of the game. I will not address all instances to avoid spoilers, but I will address one precise example that happens early in the game to explain what I mean with my statement that gameplay and plot do not align. In the early parts of the game, where Amisha learns how to fight with the slingshot, there is a sad scene of her feeling remorse and disgust over the death of the guard she kills. She was acting in self-defense, true, but Amisha is a young lady, 15 years old. She went from living a normal, noble life to this, killing a man to survive. This scene would be very powerful if the game didn't turn into killing whatever it moves a few minutes later. I understand this is a video game, but eliminating the suspense of disbelief is an awful way to tell a story. The problem is that there is a strong disconnect between the story and the gameplay. On one hand, you have a cutscene that shows Amisha feels remorse for her actions. On the other, the gameplay encourages the player to ramble around levels. The storytelling is therefore weak and breaks what could have been an enjoyable game. And believe me, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Contradictions like this only increase towards the end part of the game. And if you're wondering, yes, there is a way to powerfully show the bleak contradictions of being a hero for good and killing. In the first Valkyria Chronicles, there is a powerful scene where Welkin and Alicia confront a dying enemy soldier, one soldier out of many that were brutally killed in the battlefield's moment before. This event is not disconnected from the rest of the game. It is crucial for character development and it is treated with great importance as a reflection of what war really is: terror and death. War is not a playground, and soldiers recognize what they are doing. They are aware of killing and dying for a cause they are considered to be of greater good. Yes, in the game the player will go back and kill Imperials like before, but the game does not hide the contradiction that war is in its plot. This is powerful storytelling. Another game that combines gameplay with story is Celeste. The premise of the game's plot is simple. Madeline wishes to climb up on Celeste because doing so will change her life, and without going into spoilers, climbing the mountain is a metaphor of overcoming hardship and difficulties in life. To say that the game is difficult to play would be an understatement. You will die countless times in Celeste, but it is when you overcome that difficult jump that you grow as a person, and Madeline as a character. Speaking of power, an important element that is needed for good storytelling in video games is courage. Storytelling is an art that requires experimentation and innovation, not to be stalled and inflexible. What I mean by this is that good plots need to be told in unique and enchanting ways. Narrating an interesting story but in a boring way will inevitably bring the whole narration down. A game that fails in this regard is Yakuza 3. Just like A Plague Tale, the problem of the title is not the premise of the plot or the characters that are present in it, but rather how the story is told. As I described in my very old, definitely you should not watch video about Yakuza 3, there are instances in the game where the rhythm slows to a snail's pace, ruining the plot twist key to the events of the game. There are two big instances in Yakuza 3 where the main character of Kiryu sits down with someone and is lectured about the plot all at once, in a long and boring monologue. It is not even an interactive dialogue, no, quite literally a monotone hour-long explanation of all the plot twists that are happening in the background. Even if theoretically this is a good way to make sure the player is aware of what is happening, it is extremely dull, boring, especially considering the franchise is heavily story-driven and can do so much better. The old saying "show don't tell" is made evident here. All of these hidden facts could have been shown rather than explained much quicker and with greater attachment by the player. The plot of Yakuza 3 is not the worst, but it is definitely held back by its slow rhythm. Yakuza 0 on the other hand has quite the courage for telling its tale. The game is not afraid to take long cutscenes to build up for important reveals. In the third chapter, for instance, the initial cutscene focuses on two men talking about their own business, fully disconnected from the two chapters prior or to any chapter to come. They talk of what it feels forever, slowly dropping hints at what is about to come, and like a crescendo, Goro Mashima is introduced in style. Yakuza 0 does not have long Bibles to read in order to understand what is going on. In fact, no one explicitly explains anything, making the beautiful mosaic the plot is revealed little by little. The plot takes its time to develop without stalling. Cutscenes are cinematic and impactful, making the player want to play the game more and more. The example I shared before makes clear that the storytellers will take their time to show who a character is, rather than to have a banal, already seen introduction. I tip my hat to those mad lads at Sega to have learned from their mistakes and crafting such a wonderful magnus opus. But you do not need extravagant cutscenes to convey an interesting story. Games like Dark Souls hardly reveal anything to the player, and yet this approach works sublimely for the same reason: show don't tell. Rather than to list all of your plot points, a game should have the courage to shape its narration as best the developers see fit. You, as a player, as the protagonist, need to find out what is going on. The world doesn't revolve around you, but it is yours to explore. In the introduction of this video, I said that storytelling is a bit more objective to evaluate than plots, and this is still true. When I review games, both now in the channel and before in written form, it happened in the past that I've made the mistake of not noticing the difference between story and storytelling. Take a game like the Stanley Parable. The plot of the game with its various endings are at face values a bit silly and absurd, not everyone's cup of tea. However, it is the brilliance of the narrator, a quite literal storyteller, to make the game's narration exciting and superb. In the sequel, the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, there are endings that revolve around buckets. Yes, literal buckets. yet the incredible fantasy and imagination the developers put into the absurdity of the narration, linked with its more absurd narrator, makes the experience surreal and a masterpiece of storytelling in my eyes. The game's plot can be appreciated or not depending on personal taste, but the ingenuity of the game is a more objective quality hard to criticize. While there might not be one sole way to get good storytelling, there are definitely better and worse ways to tell a story within a game. The examples I brought are just few out of many, but I hope you understand the main principle. Storytelling in video games is extremely important. A good story with a bad narration is not a story worth enjoying. Plots in video games evolve over time, with some titles focusing their attention on the story part of a game rather than its gameplay. And while a game can be more story than game, storytelling is an essential piece in the puzzle that cannot be underestimated. Good storytelling works as a bridge between gameplay and plot. It has the courage of narrating events without falling into banality, and creativity plays a huge role in transforming a good title into a splendid one. Next time you play a game, notice how the story is told rather than the events on the story themselves. You may find yourself enjoying that game's plot more than before. If you made it this far, I wish to thank you one too many storytelling times for watching today's video. Do let me know what other games have great storytelling, perhaps not great plots, but ones that tell them sublimely. As usual, if you enjoyed the video, do not forget to leave a like, to share it and to subscribe for more. I wish you all a wonderful day, and until next time, arrivederci!